All right, welcome. So this video is using pain transmutation to your advantage. So if you've been around the channel for a little while, or if you've been into self-improvement for a little while, you may understand and know what sexual transmutation is, but what is pain transmutation? And pain transmutation is essentially, in a similar sense, the conversion of a different type of energy, a different type of emotion than sexual energy, into a positive emotion. So the same way sexual transmutation works, it can work with any emotional state that we have. And so that's honestly why it is such a key tool, is sexual transmutation, is because it can be applied to all of the different emotions that we experience, all of the different negatives that we experience, all of the different positives we experience. And we are constantly transmuting energy. That is what we do as human beings. And so how do we consciously do so? And with pain in particular, how do we transmute pain into productivity? How do we transmute pain into results? So the first thing is why we experience pain in the first place, right? Why do we actually experience pain? And so the answer to that is simple, right? Pain is simply a stimulus that is basically designed to drive us away from something negative, right? Away from something that is going to cause us harm. And it works as an opposing force to the pleasure part of our brain, right? So the pleasure stimulus in our brain is to drive us towards something, and the pain response is to drive us away from something. So the reason we experience pain, let's talk about physical pain before we get into psychological pain. But the reason we would experience physical pain is because something is wrong with our body, right? Either we touch a hot surface and therefore our body signals to us to get our hand off of that surface, or we break a leg and our brain is signaling to us that something is wrong with our leg, right? And we need to stop walking on our leg because it's obviously not doing too well. All right, so pain is simply a response to let us know that something is wrong or to get us away from something that may cause us harm. So when it comes to psychological pain, we experience psychological pain as a stimulus to being in a situation, a life situation that we don't want to stay in, right? So if you think about it, the psychological pain of not having enough money to spend on the things that you need is a stimulus to drive you towards or away from the things that you are doing to waste your money, not make enough money, and drive you towards the reality of making more money, right? So the idea of the pleasure that would come, the positive experience that would come from having that freedom, having that abundance, drives you towards riches, and the pain of being broke drives you away from staying broke, right? So that is the importance of pain, right? Pain is simply a stimulus letting us know that we need to move, we need to act, right? So what exactly is pain transmutation? How do we take something that is stressful? How do we take something that is psychologically painful and difficult to experience and turn that into something positive? So a good example of pain transmutation is actually breakups, right? Because a lot of people understand the gym arc after a breakup, right? A lot of people talk about it. I personally clown on it, but like everybody understands and knows about this thing where basically when you go through a breakup, a lot of times a lot of people like to get in the gym, get active, get moving. And this is a very basic thing because it is a combination of sexual transmutation, because post-breakup you now have freed up a ton of sexual energy that now needs a new outlet. But also it's pain transmutation because you're transmuting the pain of the breakup, however that happened, whether it's you got cheated on and you're transmuting it by becoming a more valuable person. Or let's say you got broken up with because you weren't living up to your potential, and so you are now going to transmute that pain by working to your potential. Or let's say you broke up with somebody because they were treating you wrong. That pain is, again, driving you towards raising your value so you no longer have to experience that pain again, because if you raise your value, you won't end up with a new person who will hurt you in the same way, right? A new person with a higher standard. So you're raising your value to increase your standards for the next relationship, therefore avoiding the same pain of the last one. So that's a good example of pain transmutation, right? What a lot of people end up doing when they experience pain, however, is they avoid it, right? They still are taking action and they still are, using that energy towards something, but they either use it towards an emotional reaction to something, right? They react emotionally, they react out of ego, or they avoid the situation entirely, right? They go on TikTok, they go and they smoke, they go and they drink, right? You're numbing the pain. Neither of these things actually work, however, right? Because if you react emotionally, you're likely just damaging the situation even more. You're likely causing more emotions to be brought up into the situation, therefore complicating it even more. And if you're avoiding it, well, you're numbing the pain, which is then leaving you to remove the stimulus that would drive you to change the situation, while also leaving the situation exactly the same. So what is our solution, right? How do we actually deal with pain? And the way we deal with pain is we transmute it through our work, right? So everybody avoids this pain somehow, right? Everybody does something to avoid pain. What we are going to do is we're going to work, right? When we feel pain, when we feel some type of psychological pain, this is a stimulus to drive action. And so what we need to do is program ourselves, condition ourselves to take action off of pain. But the thing is, we feel this intense level of pain and we want to just react, we want to avoid it. But in reality, if you can just sit with the pain and instead of distracting yourself from it with anything else, just work and use that energy, start to use and transmute that energy into your work by creating something of value, you actually deal with this pain a lot faster and more fully as well. You don't actually carry it beyond the situation because you have found a way to transmute and transfer it into something else. So a good example is basically use the pain to change the specific situation causing the pain, right? So with the case of a breakup, there's not much we can physically do about the breakup, the situation, but we can work on ourselves and we can put this energy towards bettering ourselves. In the case of wanting to make more money, if you are broke and that is the pain you're trying to get away from, you can use that psychological pain, you can use that energy to create something that will make you more money in the long run. So how to convert suffering into results. So when we are suffering, when we are in pain, right, we don't want to just sit right where we are. We don't want to just stay right where we are. And we understand this. This is why most people avoid. This is why most people do different things in order to avoid the pain. But what we can do, and as difficult as it is in the moment, what we can do is we can take that suffering and we can use it as fuel to drive us in order to create results. And so by keeping our focus and our attention onto what we need to accomplish and just working with that energy, right, allowing that energy to be transmuted and converted through the work that we're doing, we can use that to then create massive results. The reason why this is so effective is because, and this was studied, right? So this was proven as well. I'm not going to go and find the study, but I know that this was proven as well. So when we are running away from pain, we will run faster and we'll move faster than if we are just running towards something good. So I believe it was a mouse study. It was a study with mice, and basically they timed how quickly the mouse would run from point A to point B with a piece of cheese at the end, right? The end of the study concluded that the mouse ran the fastest when there was cheese at the end of the tunnel and a cat chasing it from behind, right? So it ran the fastest when it was running away from something bad towards something good. And humans are very similar, right? We are motivated very similarly. We will move for something good, but we will move a hell of a lot faster if it is away from something bad. And so this pain, right, this suffering that we're facing is an immediate stimulus that if we don't try to avoid it and we actually sit with it, will drive us to take action. And the reason why a lot of people can't sit with the pain is because they can't take action on it, right? They can't move. They can't put in the work at the same time. And so they have to avoid it. But if we don't avoid it and we sit with it and we use that to fuel us in actually moving and taking action and changing the situation, we can then completely transmute that emotional state and transmute that psychological pain and then free ourselves from this internal state of pain, right? Because a lot of people just accumulate that pain. A lot of people accumulate this internal stress and emotional stress. and they hold it in their bodies until they die. And this just isn't a good way to live, period, end of story. So you want to know how to convert this energy and then therefore get it out, right? We want to burn this energy away and use it as fuel, not let it just sit in the body. So what exactly is emotional transmutation and how does it work? So I briefly discussed pain transmutation, but I'm just going to go over exactly what emotional transmutation is and how it actually works, because pain is one example, one stimulus, but emotional transmutation is something we are doing constantly. So let's say this is a great example. Let's say we feel the emotion of anger, right? You feel angry. A lot of people react emotionally out of anger. This is not an example of transmutation. This is an example of emotional reaction. But what some people do, right? What I personally do when I experience anger, what some people with more emotional intelligence will do when they experience anger, is they take that anger and they sit with it for just a second, right? They don't try to suppress it. They don't try to express it. They sit with it and they observe it, right? When you sit with something and you observe it, you typically can start to unfold the layers of it, right? So the surface layer is anger. I hate this person. I hate this situation. The surface level is anger. Once you break through that surface level, usually there is a part of yourself that's either hurt, scared, afraid, or upset that you are in a situation, right? So that takes away blame from somebody else. That's not something external causing you this emotional state. It is you aren't in alignment with yourself in some capacity, or you are allowing yourself to be mistreated by another person, right? And so with these situations, you understand the why, where it's coming from. And that, when you understand why, it actually leaves it with just you. You are the one making a decision to cause this state, right? There is a decision you can make to end it as well, but it requires no ego. And so you typically will be blocked by the ego and the surface level emotion of anger, but when you get a little bit deeper, there's actually more to the story. So emotional transmutation is the process of taking that anger, what is initially anger, and converting that energy into action that would change the situation, right? We can use the example of sexual transmutation as well. So sexual transmutation, we're taking the emotion, the energy of lust, of sexual desire, and we are converting it into action in order to create something within this world, right? Create something that is reflective of our purpose. And so all emotional transmutation is taking these emotions that are initially just a feeling, right? An emotional state, and we are converting them into action, specifically action that will change the situation in a positive way, right? And so another thing is a lot of people will actually convert the emotion of love or positive emotions negatively, right? You think people who have abundance, right? You can convert this positive emotion of abundance into lack, right? Very quickly. And the way that they do this is they convert their emotional state of abundance, which was created by the person that they became, the actions that they took, the identity that they held, and they convert it by actually starting to spend more money and get into a state that is reflective of a lack mindset by spending, going out, doing all of these things that are reflective of somebody who doesn't have money. And then they therefore convert what was initially an energy of abundance into lack. But you can also equally take this energy, you can convert the emotional energy of abundance into more abundance by simply continuing to stay in alignment. And every time you feel energy that comes in that isn't in alignment with that abundance, you convert it into abundance through your actions, through your thoughts, through your emotional state, and in the internal state that you hold. And you can actually continue to convert emotions positively. But a lot of people unconsciously will take positive emotions and convert them negatively, just like we want to be converting negative emotions into positive emotions. And so the way we transmute energy and emotions is dependent on us, the person that we are, and our understanding of this process. And therefore, those who are conscious and aware can transmute energy for their own benefit. Those who are not aware will typically be in this constant fluctuation of transmutation of energy, right? They will constantly be experiencing these highs and then these lows and then high, low, and it's never going to be a consistent process because they don't understand the fact that they are the ones converting this energy. They are the ones transmuting their emotions in a way that is creating this experience. So that is all I have for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, leave a like. And if you want to see more content like this, you could subscribe and check out my TikTok and my Instagram, both of which are in the description. But that is all I have for you guys. If you learned anything valuable, let me know in the comments below, of course. And that is all I got. So peace.